Hello, I am Christy from Adventures at ISTEM. I have been a middle school science teacher. Actually, I am a middle school science teacher that's been in the classroom teaching for over 20 years now. And I have been successfully implementing the flipped classroom model for almost 10 years. Now, we all know how a challenging year this has been. And in fact, not even just this year, but the last few months of the previous year, right? But we've also understood the importance of quality time with our students, how important when we have that interaction, whether it's on Zoom online or actually in the classroom, it's super important the time we spend with them. And if you're like me, you've probably created a lot of videos to help your students when they were not with you this year during their asynchronous time. So if you would like to use those videos next year and be purposeful with your time with your students, then you'll want to stick around because today I am going to be talking about how to actually get started with the flipped classroom model, which you could then implement next school year. So how to get started with the flipped classroom model, and there's some key things that you'll want to keep in mind when you get started. So let's go ahead and begin. So getting started with the flipped classroom model, what you need to know before you actually make the video. That's right. You see, when you're doing the flipped classroom model, it doesn't start with video creation. It starts with making a plan. So you need to create a plan. And there are three things that you need to have in your plan. First, think about what does that standard say? Then, what will the students need to be able to do by the end of the unit? And finally, what basic information then will they need to understand to get themselves there? Because the power of the flipped classroom model is that you become the facilitator, the coach, and the students. Yes, the students, they're the ones that are powered. They're empowered because they are in charge of their learning. They become active learners, right? So that's the power of the flipped classroom model. So here are some things you need to get started with. So what does your standard say? Now, I teach science and I'm teaching the NGSS standards. So here is one of my standards that I teach. It says, develop a model that predicts and describes changes in particle motion, temperature, and state of a pure substance when thermal energy is added or removed. So that is my standard. So you'll want to take one of your standards and look at your standard. That's the first thing you're going to do, because we all know that it's the standards that are directing our instruction. It's not the textbook, right? It's not the instructional models that we're doing. No, the standard is what is going to be driving our instruction. All the other stuff is just used to help us teach that standard. So now we have our standards. We need to know what will the student need to be able to do at the end of the unit. And again, your standard is going to guide you. So here is what my standard looks like for the NGSS. It's very complicated and it took a while for me to figure everything out because you have the main standard at the top there. That's the performance expectation, right? But then to get to that performance expectation, they have broken it down into three different categories that all go together for that performance expectation. So we have the performance expectation, right? And it gives us some clarifying statements so that we can better understand what it is they mean by that performance expectation, right? And it tells us what the emphasis is going to be about and what the students should be able to do and examples. They also have the science and engineering practices. This is like the thinking, what the students actually have to do. So in this case, they're developing models. We have the disciplinary core ideas. These are the key knowledge that the students have to know for that standard, that goes into that standard. And then you have the cross-cutting concepts, right? This is the higher level thinking. So in this case, my students will be doing cause and effect. So what do they need to know? And what should they do by the end? Well, at the end of this unit, they should be able to create a model that can be used to predict molecule movement of pure substances when thermal energy is added or removed. But they also need to be able to analyze the cause and effect of adding and removing thermal energy. So we have the standard, right? We're using that to tell us, okay, what should the students be able to do by the end of this unit? And then finally, well, what is that basic information that they will need to understand to get themselves there? So to be able to create that model, to be able to analyze, what do they need to know? What are some basic foundational concepts they need to know in order to get themselves there? And once again, you're going to use your standard as a guide. So most of the time your standards have like little frameworks, right? And they kind of guide you on those key concepts that they're going to have to learn. That's what you want to use. For the NGSS, we're looking at the disciplinary core ideas, because here's the basic concepts that they are going to have to know and they're going to have to work with when they're creating their models, when they're analyzing, when they're looking at cause and effect. So by using this, I now know my students need to know about the molecule movement for each state. They need to know about phase changes that occur when thermal energy is added or removed. They also need to know how gases behave when thermal energy or pressure is added or removed. So now notice, that was not called out in the performance expectation, but it is called out though in the disciplinary core ideas. So gases are different. They behave differently than solids and liquids. And so my students need to know how that happens. And then they also need to understand what a pure substance is, because it specifically says pure substance. So they need to know the difference between a pure substance and something that is not a pure substance. These are the different things my students need to know. And that's what I could use to create my videos. So I could make a video on each one of these, and these would become my flipped lessons. All the harder stuff, though, developing the model, the analyzing, the looking at cause and effect, all that can be done in my classroom. So in order to understand what videos we're going to create, we don't just start creating videos. You come up with a game plan. Before you make the video, think, what does your standard say? What will the students need to be able to do by the end of the unit based on that standard? And what basic information will they need to understand to get themselves there? If you would like to learn more about the flipped classroom model and you're ready to go a little bit deeper, you want some more information, I do have a guide to help you get started. You can check it out in the comments. I'll put it there. And I would love to help you on your journey. So with that said, have a wonderful rest of your week. For those of you that are finishing up soon in the next few weeks or even next week, have a great summer. Make sure you take time for yourself, for your family. Take at least a few weeks off, because guess what? You've definitely earned it this year. So have a wonderful time.
Thank you for watching another Adventures in ISTEM and Beyond video. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more Adventures in ISTEM and Beyond videos. For more ideas on how to incorporate science, technology, and skills for life into your classroom, go to adventuresinistem.com.